check it's working. Yeah, I think that's working. All right, back here for part 2 with the main man, Jamie Dobb. Next question I got from a Louis Montgomery. He's put, how is it knowing that you are the last world champion from Britain and potentially the last for a long while, seeing that the competition's coming up? And are there any tips to help them progress? But I think you've sort
of... I mean, obviously, the guys that are there now, I think, it's a bummer that I am the last one. It saddens me in some ways. I have tried to help a few guys to try and get there.
Yeah.
I think Conrad Muse is probably the most talented person in the paddock.
Yeah.
That goes for Jeffrey, Geyser, everybody.
Yeah.
He just, he's still developing. People mature at different times, ages, and I think he just needs that, and it's coming. You've got Ben Watson. I mean, I just feel sorry for him with what's happening at the moment. I really do believe. I believe Ustream and have done a fantastic job of where they've taken it. I'm not one of them that's against them. Okay. But the one thing I am against, and I think it's the worst thing that has ever been made, is putting that age rule in. I don't see one positivity with it. I think you're taking kids' livelihoods away from them that they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And it really saddens me. It's like this year will they be racers, will they won't? And I'm kind of hearing now they've said they're definitely not changing the age thing. But it's like, look at poor Ben Watson. It's like he had a chance of winning a championship this year. He obviously had a few niggles coming in, but he'd get going. Yeah. But it was his last chance to make a stand. And I think it's just BS. And I think it is, again, the worst thing that's the worst deal that's ever been. You know what I mean? We've had Jorge Prado. He was 18 last year and 17 the year before.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody would have beat him anyway.
Yeah.
Bring anybody of the old ones back, they wouldn't have beat Jorge. So I don't see any positivity in it. And then now you've got so many of the old guys not moving. It's like there is nowhere for them to go.
Yeah.
So you've got certain people that. Yeah, then you've got certain people that dads are paying huge amounts of money for them to be on teams.
Yeah.
And not everybody's got that. And it's just, at the end of the day, there is a business there and the riders are putting their life on the line. It's very dangerous and there's a lot of risk there. And then to take their livelihood away from them, I'd love to talk to them. You know what I mean? It's like there's a couple of areas where I come through from the charity side, from the Road to Recovery for safety aspects. Some riders just shouldn't be on a 450. They're not the right size. Yeah. I mean, Jorge is one of the biggest prospects and best prospects out there. He's had 2 huge injuries already. Yeah. His hip, femur, that could have been a lot worse. Yeah. And then he's just broke his collarbone last week. So it's, and for me, are they ready for a 450? Maybe Jorge needed that one more year. You know what I mean? People develop in different times. And so, I don't think it's right that somebody should just stay down there and keep winning championships and things. I mean, that needs to be looked at. I get that, but it definitely needs something. But yeah, and I mean, and then behind, going back, you've got Joel Rizzi coming through. I think he can ride a motorcycle, and he just needs the right support now, the right team and everything around him. And I believe he has the talent and ability to do that. It's just what he can do now and how much effort he can put in himself and everything. And hopefully he can go to that next level. And then it's just a bit of luck. You know what I mean? You just need to be in the right place at the right time. Who'd have thought I'd have done that at 29 when I was just fortunate that Kurt gave me an opportunity. Nobody else wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so yeah, he did that, and then that was it. So I was quite fortunate, and so I'm hoping that can happen for some of the other guys.
Yeah, 100%. Right, I've got one from Tom Fuller.
Yeah.
What was your favourite custom painted helmet? No pressure. Laugh out loud.
I've been quite fortunate.
He did put a picture up as well of a couple of them in that
Yeah.
question, on Facebook. Yeah.
I mean, Tom's obviously done some pretty cool ones for me, and his work's just getting better and better. I mean, I first met Tom when he came out to TLD, and I think he worked there for a week or so, and just learning different things. Troy Lee Designs, that is back in the day, and I was quite fortunate that Troy Lee, I always used to get a helmet done when I went out there every year, and then riding for Mitch, I got him to do my helmets. And then OCD, that's another one who made some pretty cool things for me. So I've been quite fortunate. My favourite one has a bit of a funny story to it, because it's like, to this day, it just pisses me off. So I was leaving America, and I came back to do the donations in Spain.
Oh, yeah.
And I was good friends with everybody at Troy Lee. One of the head designers lived with me, Mackie, who's still there. Troy was a good friend. So all these guys and the painters. And they did me this. It was just this cool helmet. It had like checkered flag down one side in like British racing green. Then it had the Union Jack. And up the Union Jack, it had like Troy had done it all handwritten, like God Save the Queen. But then they'd all put cool messages on there, like good luck, and just like a goodbye present, if you could say.
Pretty cool. That's cool.
And I love that thing. And I brought it back, and Paul Malin had to take it to his Albert painter because they were going to copy it.
Right, okay.
And so I gave it to him, and he brought it back, and the guy had rubbed out my helmet and put the worst design on it you have ever seen.
You're joking.
No. And also, to top it off, because Troy used to do everything for Shuey, there was some certain things that went inside the air vents at the front that were different, and they were for the following year's helmet, and you couldn't get them. They were just for Troy Lee riders. He'd nicked that. I can't look at the guy. He's probably a lovely guy. I cannot look at him. And he always apologises every time he sees me. But I can't look at him to this day. It's not Tom, by the way. But I cannot look at him till this day. I still get pissed off with it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So
come back different, I'd be fuming.
Mate, honestly, I was gutted like you wouldn't believe. Because it was like literally the 5 years I'd spent across there, and they were like, I was closer with all them guys than anybody.
Yeah.
That's where I used to spend a lot of my time, and we used to go mountain biking, and it was just, they were like my family away from home. And like I say, all the painters in the shop had all put little messages on there. And like literally it got rubbed out. I was like so gutted.
That is terrible.
But, yeah, so that was my favourite helmet, but it wasn't to be.
Oh, that's terrible. I can't believe that. That's a brilliant story. Right, Next one I got is from Sean Graham. He's put, what was your first ever motocross club you rode at, and a year roughly, and what bike was that on?
Well, actually, my first motocross was, I did a trial before I did a motocross, but it was still at Chesterfield at Huntston. And then my first motocross was also at Chesterfield, and I was on a Suzuki 50, and I believe it was 77. I think I was 5. I started riding when I got a bike for Christmas I was born in 72. I had a bike for Christmas when I was 2, but I turned 3 in January. And that's when I started riding. And then I got a Suzuki 50, and that's what I did my first race on. Well, actually, the first race, going back, that's another funny one. I didn't go with my mum or dad. I went with friends because they had to go somewhere else. And I ended up racing. And I got scared of the track, and I didn't race after practice because I was too scared. So that was my first race. That was my first race. And then the second race, which is quite funny, Paul Malin was actually there. So that's basically our rivalry started. I wasn't much of a rival to Paul back then. He was a lot better than I was. But he was at the first race I ever went to.
So you said you was born in 72, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that the reason? Because I remember, I'm sure that's not your number at Rob Hooper Suzuki, 72.
Yeah, that's why.
Is that the reason?
Yeah, 64 I couldn't have, which was always my race number.
Yeah.
So I just went with 72. So
yeah, I remember that. Rob
Stefan just wanted to copy me.
yeah, exactly that. Right. Next one I've got is from Jason Hodges. Do you remember getting black flagged at the South Wales Schoolboy National by his father, Glyn Hodges? He was the clerk of the course at the time, apparently. They're not exactly sure what year it was. We're talking like 87, 88, and it was at Rockfield in Monmouth. And apparently you were racing Julian Rawson there. And he goes, my dad would love it if you mention it. So, do you remember?
I don't totally remember it. I mean, I'm guessing it could be 87. Because 87 I rode with Rawson quite a lot.
Yeah.
But 87 I had a special license and I actually did the British Championship when I was 15.
Oh, right, okay.
And there's some stories. And so I only did the British Championships and a few nationals here and there. So it was one of them years when I was 15, and like I say, the British Championships were another learning curve altogether.
So do you actually remember this black flag then?
I don't think I'd love to hear more about it, and maybe we can ask some more questions, but I vaguely remember, but I don't remember it to think.
Something to do with you crashed at the start or something, so I'm presuming that's either in the first corner or something. Yeah. And then they were saying, like, obviously they knew you were obviously crashing near the back, and then at the end of the first lap apparently you come round near the front, so, and then you'd been seen cutting the track or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, it's like I can guarantee you I never cut the track or anything like that, but who knows? I mean, there was some. The problem was back in them days is there was a lot of stories and everything. You know, my mum's got a great one at a BMSA race for you. You may love this one. Yeah. So parents have to go and marshal.
Yeah.
So my mum sat there, and my mum's quite quiet.
Yeah.
And the guy's there, and he's going on and like this, and he says, it was like, I think it was the juniors or inter 80s, I forget what class I was in at the time, and they were like, I think it was the inter 80s, they're like, oh, this guy goes, oh, that bloody Dobby's in this one. He says, have you heard about him? And he just starts going off. Do you know he don't go to school? And do you know he's like, parents are like this? And do you know this? Literally just going on. And so the race starts, and it's like, well, what race is your son in? Oh, he's in this one. He's like, what number is he? He's like 64. And he's like, oh. He says, I'm ever so sorry. He says, it's just what people tell us.
Yeah.
So you just never know, you know what I mean? We used to keep ourselves to ourselves. My dad was a very strict in certain aspect and disciplinarian, that, you know, you went there to do a job, you know what I mean? By this time I was supported by Honda.
Yeah.
You know, you're there, even though you're only 12 years old, you're there to do a job. It's the fun element, it's still there, but you're not there just to mess around.
Yeah.
So, you know, we used to have a family, which is quite cool because I work with him till this day. And that was the Morrisons, Eddie and Bubs. And Lee Morrison was their son. Lee is now, he broke his neck when he was riding for Rob Hooper in 92, I think it was. So he retired, and then he went into the movie world. And now he's been Daniel Craig's stunt double for many years and things, but now he's a coordinator, and he's probably one of the best guys out there. So, you know, he's been quite fortunate. He learned from a guy called Gary Powell, and Gary's loves his motocross and everything. And so it's quite a small little world there. But yeah, Lee's there, and we used to just park with Lee and his family every weekend, and it was just, yeah, we used to love it. But going back to your question, I mean, I think there was quite a few haters out there back in the day, so who knows, but I knew I wouldn't have cut the course, but say la vie.
Okay, cool. Right, I've got someone did ask me this, but I don't know who the name was because I couldn't find it, but I know they asked me this. They put they said, did it pay off financially for you winning the World Championship?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's okay and everything. Compared to now, it's not the same. The guys in the MXGP class, the top 7 are making quadruple of what not even champions.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's the inflation and all this kind of stuff, but I think when we were, it was okay, and it was good, but it's not like it was in the 80s, and it's not like it is now, so but yeah, I did okay. I mean, the toughest thing is like the World Championships years were great, but I was hardly making anything leading up to that. The year I got the deal with KTM, I actually says to Kurt, I says, if I don't make £50,000, I'm quitting, because the risk and reward is just not. It just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And he did me a deal, and he gave me what I wanted and everything, and then I went on. But I only really made money where you could save something from realistically 2000, 2001, 2, 3. That was it. 2004 I was paying myself, even though I'd finished second, first, fourth, and then I'd hurt my shoulder, so it was a bit tough, but it is what it was. And but like I say, I'm not I came out all right, and the biggest thing is I came out still in one piece, which is the biggest thing.
Yeah, for sure. I've got one from Pat Stott. He's got a couple of sort of questions into this. He's put, what do you think the best year or era of motocross was? And when did too many rules and image and marketing become too much or too professional?
For me, I loved the 80s. I loved, Johnny O'Mara. Ricky Johnson was my favorite. Yeah. Ricky was we went out to America when they were kids. There was a few families. There was Mervyn Anstey, there was us, and a couple of other families. We all went out and rode in America, and for some reason I just connected with Ricky. He was still 15 years old, and I collect jerseys. Still do. Yeah. And I've probably got the best collection, or I'd put my collection up against anybody's. It's like, but
where'd you live?
That's probably, yeah. I'm just looking at one now. It's on my Instagram, but I've got Johnny O'Mara's from Majora when he beat Mr. Thorpe.
Wow.
I've actually got his jersey from there, and I've got Bob Anna's from the Nations in America. Wow. I got Wardy's from the Nations in America. Ricky gave me his jersey from the Nations in America. So where Pro Circuit have got the pants, I've got the 3 matching jerseys. So yeah. So but I got loads. Like I say, I love collecting.
That's pretty cool.
That kind of stuff. So
yeah.
I love the 80s. I was such a fan. I was like, I was a fan of Dave Thorpe because he was English and everything, and obviously I was on Honda, and we'd done like certain things together, so I think if you say now, that was my favorite because it was just everything. I was just in awe of everything. It was just like.
Are you surprised, even like you say in the 80s, are you surprised how everyone's still into it now? All these social media things, there's like 80s and 90s motocross everywhere. It's like all this retro, and everyone loves it, mad for it.
Yeah, they do, but I just don't know why they want to ride them old piles of shit of bikes. The nations would be awesome if we could go on new bikes.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun and nicer to ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's no, it is great. I went to my sister's house the other day, and her husband's a bit of a collector, and he's got some pretty cool stuff himself he brought out, and we were looking at.
Yeah.
But like I say, I love the 80s for what they were, and because I was a huge fan, and I just loved that time, and I just remember being there, and just, you know, Brad Lackey at Farley Castle, and Roger De Costa and Mikkola and all these. I just loved that, you know. I think if you could speak to Keith Thorpe or any old mechanics, I've never been a mechanic, I've never wanted to be a mechanic, but till this day I can sit and look at factory bikes all day long and not get bored. Yeah. I don't know why it is. I just love looking at the bikes and the little things that they've got. And yeah. I used to just stick my head in the little awnings. You know, they all used to have the awnings and look. Yeah. And I think people used to get to know me every year. I'd be there just looking and things like that. So
factory parts and all that, pretty cool.
Yeah. So
yeah,
that was good. I mean, when did it get a bit out of line? You know, things change. You know, it's like, you know, and I'm not, and I'll go with change. You know what I mean? If we want this sport to grow and be better, the social media side, the marketing, the professionalism, you know, it's just how things grow. You know what I mean? And it's just how everything evolves. So, you know, I only see the positives in that. You know what I mean? If we want this sport to be as big as any other sport, yeah, more people have got to do that. And like I was saying before, you know, we've got a federation run by amateurs in certain aspects, who are the decision makers. Yeah. And, you know, I don't believe, can you imagine the Premier League if it was run by amateurs?
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah, they make decisions, it's mad.
You know, the AMCAs are far better.
Yeah,
I mean, they're struggling now.
It's really good. Mm.
But the AMCA is an amateur organisation run by professionals. Yeah. ACU is a professional organisation run by amateurs.
Couldn't make it out, could you?
No. So, yeah. It's,
he mentioned on here as well, he put, when did it go from being fun to a wide open job, and did it become a chore with more risk and less reward?
For me,
yeah,
I would say it became a job at 12, pretty much. Like I was saying, the seriousness got into it. I went through a part of a friend was playing ice hockey, and I started playing ice hockey, and I told my dad, I'm like, Dad, I'm going to quit. I want to play ice hockey. And my dad didn't swear that much, but he says, don't be fucking stupid. And then just walked off. And that was the last that was said about that. He did have one thing, though, in place for him. I will say that. I couldn't skate. So it didn't really help me.
Yeah.
But it was just something different, you know, when you know, I was doing 40 hours a week in school holidays.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I lived on a farm. I had my own tracks. You know, when I got a bit older, Paul Edmondson to this day is one of my best friends, and we'd just go out and ride and run tanks of fuel out, and then, you know, go back. One of us would be pushing the bikes back. If you ever see Paul pushing a bike back, you'll see how good he is doing it, or I. And we all learned by pushing our bikes back from then, and it's like, but
that was really fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it was the good old days.
Yeah, for sure. Right, I've got one here from Adam Fry. He's put, which city around the world did he enjoy visiting on a GP circuit away from the track, and any funny stories from it?
Well, back in the day, we all used to drive, like your mechanic and you, and obviously my mechanic was Julian, my brother, and you'd normally have a van and a caravan, and you just drive from race to race. And, you know, in the week you'd find a campsite to stop at, and you'd always have a rider or two that you'd all follow, and it used to be a bit of a giggle and things like that, but it was quite relaxed and everything. Later on in life, it was just I'd go in and then I'd come out. I wasn't a last minute thing because I love being at the races. Yeah. So I was probably the first to get there and one of the last to leave. Yeah. But the countries that I really like, I love Italy. I still love Italy today. My wife's like half Italian anyway, so that's probably a bit of it. But yeah, I love being there. I mean, for the funny stories, the main ones were always the Motocross to Nations because that was the last race of the year. Yeah. And we used to have some giggles at them. Spain was a good one. Because obviously I was still racing in America, and like I say, Emig, he's to this day is one of my best friends, and he was there, and we went out with him and Jeremy, and then there was like Paul and Robbie Herring with us, and also Dave Thorpe came out. There's a bunch of us, and I think there was the Motorvision guys were with us. I just remember it was quite late in the night, and there'd been a few drinks, and there was Jeremy, myself, and a few others just jumped in the fountain in the middle of a res. And then we went to throw Dave in, and it needed a few of us because he's a big old boy, he's Dave. But he's like, just a minute, just let me take my clothes off first, then you can throw me in. So Dave, we let him take his clothes off, then we throw them in, and then McGrath picks up his clothes, or Jeff did, and then he threw the clothes in straight after him. Anyway.
So he went all that way. Brilliant.
Yeah, so that was one. Australia, there was that one got a bit heated because the Dunlop guy forgot to bring mousses, and in Australia for the Nations, and it was Everts. He got a flat tyre, and that's what cost them the win. So the Belgians decided to, and the Dunlop guy was a Belgian guy back in the day, decided to just crucify his rental car. And I think they just flattened the whole thing, jumping on the roof, Smets and everybody. So, yeah, that was
payback.
Yeah. So there was some funny stories, but that's about it, really, that you could remember. There was some good ones in America when we were there. But I think people have heard them about Mitch Paynton and Troy Leon flights and everything, which I was quite fortunate to be there and view for myself. But yeah, good old days.
All right, Jamie, I was just going to call that the end of part 2 for a second.
Cool.
And save that.